XXXTentacion's mom just turned 46 years old, and the life she's living right now is sad. Not because she's broke, not because she's alone, but because every single day she wakes up managing the legacy of a son she will never get back. See, a lot of people assume that when XXXTentacion was murdered in June of 2018, his mother walked away set for life. Millions in the bank, royalties flowing, nothing but grief and money. But the truth behind how she actually lives at 46 is far more complicated than that. Because what she inherited wasn't just wealth. She inherited war, legal battles from multiple directions, the full weight of protecting her son's name, his music, his child's future, and the emotional cost of doing all of that while the whole world watches. So today, we're going in. The real story of who she is now, what she deals with every single day, and why her life today is just sad. Yo, what's good, fam? Welcome back. If you're new here, this is where we go beyond the headlines and get into what's really happening with the people behind the music we love. And today we're talking about one of the most complicated figures in the whole posthumous legacy conversation. Her name is Cleopatra Barnard, the woman who raised Jahseh Onfroy, the woman who watched him become a generation-defining artist before his life was taken at 20 years old, and the woman who has been carrying his entire world on her back ever since. So check it. We're breaking this all the way down, from who Cleo was before all of this to what she's navigating right now at 46. Let's get into it. Before we talk about where Cleopatra Barnard is today, you have to understand where Jahseh Onfroy came from, because that story and her story are inseparable. Jahseh Dwayne Ricardo Onfroy was born on January 23, 1998, in Plantation, Florida, to Jamaican parents. Both his father and grandfather were Rastafarians. His name itself came from the Bob Marley song So Jahseh. He grew up in Broward County in a difficult environment. Cleopatra raised him largely as a single mother, navigating real financial hardship and a home life that was far from stable. And by his own admission, Jahseh had a rough early road, run-ins with the law, stints in juvenile detention. But somewhere inside all of that chaos, there was an artist brewing, and Cleopatra saw it before anyone else did. She was there for the earliest records, the SoundCloud uploads, the late nights grinding, all of it. Before XXXTentacion was a brand or a legacy or a catalog to be managed, he was her kid trying to figure out how to turn his pain into something people could hear. When XXXTentacion finally started putting music out on SoundCloud, the response was unlike anything the industry had seen in a long time. His sound wasn't clean or polished. It was raw and emotional and angry and hurting all at once. Songs like Look at Me weren't just records. They were moments. The way he moved between emo-influenced melodies and aggressive rap in the same breath caught something that the mainstream hadn't heard before. His debut album, 17, introduced a more vulnerable acoustic side, songs about depression and heartbreak that hit his audience like a gut punch. Then when his sophomore album dropped in 2018, it debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200. That's not a small thing. That's a kid from Broward County who was in juvenile detention not that long before, landing at the top of the entire music industry. Cleopatra went from a woman managing hotels and navigating the music world from the outside to the mother of one of the biggest artists on the planet, almost overnight. And she was just beginning to understand what that meant when everything stopped. Then June 18, 2018 happened. Jahseh was shot and killed outside Riva Motorsports in Deerfield Beach, Florida.
Developing right now, a search for a killer in South Florida after an up-and-coming rapper is shot dead. 20-year-old XXXTentacion killed in an apparent robbery. Police say the artist, whose real name is Jahseh Onfroy, was leaving a Broward County motorcycle shop yesterday when he was shot by two men who ran up to his car. He was rushed to a hospital but did not make it. Onfroy's death comes just weeks.
He was leaving a motorcycle dealership when four men approached his vehicle. They took a Louis Vuitton bag containing $50,000 in cash, and they took his life. He was 20 years old, and in the seconds that followed, everything changed. Not just for the millions of fans across the globe who had connected with his music, but for one woman in Florida who had just lost her only son. Real talk, the grief that Cleopatra Barnard has had to carry is something most of us cannot even begin to understand. Because it didn't come with silence or privacy, it came with cameras, lawsuits, fan expectations, business decisions, and a legacy that refused to go quiet. And from the moment Jahseh was gone, Cleopatra didn't get time to just be a mother in mourning. She had to become the executor of an empire. So here's the thing that most people get completely wrong about Cleopatra Bernard. And this is important because the number one assumption people make is that when XXXTentacion died and left behind an estate worth over $50 million, his mother got that money, that she cashed out, that she's been sitting on his rap money ever since. Fam, that is not what happened. Here's the truth. XXXTentacion had a son. His name is Gekume Onfroy, and Gekume was born on January 26, 2019, 7 months after his father was murdered. Jase never got to hold him, never heard his son cry, never saw his face, but because Gekume exists, he is the legal heir to everything his father left behind. The courts confirmed it. XXXTentacion's only child is his sole heir. That $50 million estate, the catalog, the royalties, the streaming money, the merchandise, the record label Bad Vibes Forever, all of it flows toward Gekume's future, not Cleopatra's pocket. So what does Cleopatra actually have? She has the job. She was named the trustee of the estate, which means she manages it. She makes the decisions. She oversees the releases, the deals, the licensing, the foundation. She does the work, but the assets belong to her grandson. Think of it like being hired to run someone else's company. You show up every single day. You handle the hard calls. You fight the battles, but at the end of the day, you don't own it. That's the reality of Cleopatra Bernard's financial situation that most people never bother to look up before forming an opinion. She is not living off her son's rap money. She is working to protect it for the child he never got to raise. And speaking of the legal battles, fam, where do we even start? Because on top of managing a $50 million estate for her grandson, raising that same grandson, and processing the grief of losing her only son, Cleopatra has spent years in courtrooms fighting people who came for pieces of what Jase left behind. From inside the family, from the music business, from every direction you can imagine. And every single one of those battles landed squarely on her shoulders. Because Cleopatra Bernard didn't just inherit a catalog, she inherited a courtroom, multiple courtrooms. And the legal war started almost immediately after Jase was gone. One of the earliest and messiest disputes came from inside the family itself. XXXTentacion's half-brother Corey Pack came for Cleopatra in a major way. In June of 2020, Pack's mother Jody Cavney filed an $11 million lawsuit against Bernard on her son's behalf, claiming that Corey had been listed as a beneficiary in the rapper's will, entitled to 25% of the estate, but that Cleopatra had cut him out of his rightful inheritance. The lawsuit alleged that Cleo had worked out a side arrangement involving Genesis Sanchez, Gekume's mother, that effectively pushed Corey Pack out of his portion of the money. But here's where it gets real. Cleopatra fired back. Her response was direct. The court had already determined that Corey Pack was entitled to nothing from the estate, that Gekume was the sole heir, and she went further, pointing out that she had actually been generous to Corey and his mother in ways that went well beyond any legal obligation. She claimed she had paid Corey's living expenses, bought him a car, and gifted both him and his mother a mortgage-free home. She expected the lawsuit to be dismissed, but the battles didn't stop there. In 2021, Corey Pack came back with a new filing, this time accusing Cleopatra of creating shell companies and holding companies specifically to hide estate money and transfer it out of reach of other claimants. Broward County court records confirmed Pack filed a fraudulent transfer complaint alleging that Bernard, who controlled the estate and Jase's record label, was moving millions into these new entities to protect herself from having to share assets. That complaint was the third legal action filed in Broward County, stemming from Jase's death, and Pack's attorney Robert Stokes said publicly that the complaint was designed to recover assets being moved from the probate estate so that his client could not be denied his inheritance rights. 3 separate legal actions, multiple years of litigation, Cleopatra fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously while also trying to run the estate, manage releases, and raise her grandson. And then there was the music side, because even in the studio drama followed, producer Jimmy Duval filed a lawsuit against the XXXTentacion estate, seeking $1 million in unpaid royalties and credit for his work on the breakout single, Look at Me. Duval said he initially tried to keep things private, but came forward after, being left off the credits entirely. The estate became a target from every angle, music producers wanting their money, family members wanting their shares, all of it landing on Cleopatra. Now let's talk about something that often gets overlooked in all of this legal noise. And that's the relationship between Cleopatra Bernard and her grandson Gekume Onfroy. Because at the center of everything she does, that little boy is the most important reason why. Gekume is now in his mid-childhood years, growing up in Florida. His mother is Genesis Sanchez, the woman Jase was in a relationship with at the time of his death. Cleopatra and Genesis actually had their own legal dispute in the early days after Jase was gone. A custody and support battle that played out in court, but eventually they reached a settlement, establishing a trust for Gekume and coming to terms on how his upbringing would be handled going forward. And by multiple accounts, Cleopatra has remained an active presence in Gekume's life since then. Her grandson carries his father's name and his father's features. There are moments when Cleopatra shares glimpses of Gekume on social media, and the comment sections fill up immediately with fans who see Jase in that child's face. It's a surreal thing to witness from the outside. And for Cleopatra, it must be something else entirely. Looking at your grandson and seeing your son at the same time, loving him completely, while the reminder of what you lost sits right there in front of you. Part of Cleopatra's daily mission is making sure that when Gekume is old enough to fully understand who his father was, he has access to everything. The music, the story, the meaning behind all of it, the complicated parts, not just the highlight reel, the real version of who Jase Onfroy was, because nobody owes Gekume a curated version of his father. He deserves the whole picture, and Cleopatra is the one building that picture for him in real time. Every estate decision she makes, every foundation project she launches, every posthumous release she approves or rejects, she's making those calls knowing that one day her grandson is going to look at all of it and ask, was this right? So he never has to ask a stranger about Jase Onfroy. Think about what that is for a moment. Raising your grandson while managing his dead father's estate, while fighting lawsuits, while processing grief that never gets to finish, while the whole world debates your decisions publicly. That's what Cleopatra Bernard's life actually looks like. But here's where it gets real important to understand something else about who Cleo is. Because through all of this, she didn't just sit in a courthouse and manage spreadsheets. She built something. She channeled everything into the XXXTentacion Foundation. The XXXTentacion Foundation is a non-profit organization built on the principles Jase himself was embracing during the final stretch of his life. Before he was killed, XXXTentacion had started shifting. He was talking more about mental health, about the youth, about using his platform for something that mattered beyond the music. Cleopatra took that direction and turned it into a living institution. The foundation focuses on mental health awareness, youth development, educational support, community aid, and disaster relief. And the work has been real, not performative. One of the most significant projects connected to the foundation is the Jase Multipurpose Hall, a school built for underprivileged children in his honor. The completion of that project in 2025 was a massive moment. A building bearing her son's name, serving children who need it. That's not a press release moment. That's a life's work moment. And that's just one example. Cleopatra also organized the donation of computers to high school students in Jamaica, connecting back to Jase's Jamaican heritage through his parents and the cultural roots that shaped who he was. At handover ceremonies, students and faculty formed an X with their hands in honor of the rapper whose family came from their island. The foundation has also provided disaster relief and community assistance during emergencies, carrying out the kind of humanitarian work that aligns with the version of Jase that his most loyal fans always believed in. So check it. When you look at Cleopatra Bernard's day-to-day life right now at 46, it is full in a way that most people don't account for. She is running the business of an estate worth tens of millions of dollars. She is overseeing posthumous music strategy, merchandise, and licensing decisions. She is managing the foundation. She is helping raise her grandson. She is responding to public scrutiny every time a new release drops or a legal development surfaces. She maintains a significant social media presence, over 2 million followers, where she regularly pays tribute to Jase and keeps his name alive in a cultural conversation. She has transitioned from homemaker and hotel manager to one of the most recognizable figures in posthumous hip-hop estate management. Not because she wanted fame, but because there was no one else to do it, and because her son left behind something that the world was not ready to let go of. And that public pressure is real, fam. It doesn't let up. Every time a posthumous release comes out, fans dissect it. They debate whether it honors Jahseh or commercializes him. They question who approved what. They analyze the mixing, the features, the rollout. And all of those opinions eventually point back at Cleopatra, because she's the one steering the ship. When people love a release, they appreciate it quietly. When they don't, they come for her. And social media means that criticism is constant and it's loud. There are corners of the internet that have built entire arguments around the idea that the estate has mishandled Jahseh's catalog or made decisions he wouldn't have wanted. Whether any of that is true is another conversation. But the point is that Cleopatra has had to operate under that kind of pressure for going on 7 years now, with no real break, no moment where the world stops watching what she does with her son's name. And she's doing all of it while living in a country where the criminal trial of her son's killers added another chapter of public trauma to an already impossible story. The guilty verdicts gave her some measure of justice, but justice and peace are not the same thing. They never are. But here's where the sadness lives. Because people describe Cleopatra's current life as sad, and when you first hear that word attached to someone who manages a $50 million estate, has a beautiful grandson, and has built a foundation in her son's honor, it can sound wrong. How is that sad? Let me tell you why that word is the right one. The sadness isn't about money. It's not about whether Cleopatra has a nice house or doesn't have one. She's living in a $3.4 million property that Jahseh himself selected for her before he died. Before he was gone, he was already thinking about her future, already trying to take care of his mom. That's who he was, and that house, as beautiful as it is also a permanent reminder of that. Every wall, every room, chosen by her son, who is no longer here to see her in it. What she doesn't have is her son. And every single accomplishment that comes out of the estate, every platinum plaque, every foundation project completed, every time Gekuma hits a milestone, every posthumous release that debuts on the charts, every moment that proves Jahseh's legacy is still alive and growing. Every single one of those moments comes wrapped in the reminder that he is not here to see any of it. She is celebrating for him, advocating for him, fighting for him, but she cannot reach him. And no level of success changes that fundamental fact. That's where the sadness is. Not in her bank account, in the space beside her that never gets filled back up. Real talk. There's a kind of grief that never ends when the person you lost was also the reason for everything you're still doing. Most people get to grieve and eventually find a way to step away from the source of their pain, to move on, to build a new chapter that doesn't constantly pull them back to the moment they lost everything. Cleopatra doesn't get that option, because her son's name is literally her daily work. There is no stepping away. There is no chapter where Jahseh doesn't come up. She is permanently tethered to June 18, 2018, not by choice, by love and by responsibility. And she carries that without complaint, publicly at least. Cleopatra didn't choose to be an estate manager. She chose to be a mother. And then, one afternoon in June 2018, changed what the rest of her life would look like. And she couldn't walk away, because walking away would mean letting Jahseh's name fade. And that's not something she's ever been willing to do. She also carries this under constant public scrutiny. Every decision she makes around the estate gets debated online. Every posthumous release is analyzed by fans who feel a sense of ownership over Jahseh's catalog. Every legal development brings another wave of opinions. There are fans who love her and fans who have questioned her handling of the estate. There are family members who have sued her. There are business partners who have come for a piece. And through all of it, she shows up. Because at 46 years old, Cleopatra Bernard understands that this is what protecting her son looks like. It's not glamorous, it's not peaceful, it's constant work, and it comes with a weight that doesn't lift. And when you zoom out and look at what XXXTentacion actually meant to a generation, the scale of that weight becomes even clearer. Jahseh was not just a rapper, he was a cultural moment. His music gave language to depression, heartbreak, and inner chaos for millions of young people who felt like nobody else was speaking directly to them. His YouTube channel sits at over 43 million subscribers. His content has generated billions of streams. His posthumous albums Skins and Bad Vibes Forever both charted at the top of the Billboard 200. The Sad video alone has hundreds of millions of views. His impact didn't shrink after his death. In many ways, it grew, and Cleopatra is the person holding all of that up. So where does this story go from here? Gekume Onfroy is growing up, and there will come a moment when he starts asking deeper questions, when he listens to his father's music and really hears it, when he searches his father's name and finds everything: the legacy, the controversy, the love, the loss. Cleopatra will be there to help him navigate all of it, to make sure that when Gekume meets his father, it's on his own terms, with the context and the love that Cleo has spent years preparing. That's the long game. That's the mission underneath the mission. At 46 years old, Cleopatra Aretha Bernard is not living the life she imagined. She's living something harder and heavier and more complicated than that. She is a grandmother, an estate trustee, a foundation leader, a public figure, and a grieving mother all at once. She is living quietly in Florida while managing one of the most watched legacies in modern hip-hop. She is doing the work that love demands when love outlives the person you love. And that's why her story matters. Not because she's rich, not because she's famous, but because she made a choice to keep showing up for Jasa every single day when nobody would have blamed her for stepping back and disappearing. She didn't disappear. She built something. She fought for something, and she's still here. She also built it on top of a foundation of grief that never went away. Because here's the thing nobody talks about. When you're grieving in public, the world doesn't actually give you space to grieve. They give you tasks. They give you decisions to make and deadlines to meet and court dates to show up to. Cleopatra has been in motion every single day since June 18, 2018, because stopping would mean feeling all of it at once. And so she moves. She manages, she builds, she advocates, she shows up for Gekume. She posts about Jase on the anniversary of his birthday and the anniversary of his death. She sits in courtrooms. She attends handover ceremonies in Jamaica where children receive computers in her son's name. All of it is grief. All of it is love, just in the form of action because there's nothing else to do with it. At the end of the day, fam, the story of Cleopatra Bernard at 46 is a story about what it actually costs to preserve someone's dream after they're gone. It's about the difference between inheriting wealth and inheriting responsibility. It's about being the last line of defense between your son's name and a world that doesn't always handle legacies with care. And it's about a grandmother making sure that one day, a little boy named Gekume can look back at everything his father created and understand that someone loved Jase enough to protect every piece of it. And that's the story of Cleopatra Bernard at 46. A woman who never asked to be a public figure, but became one because she refused to let her son disappear. A woman who turned a $3.4 million home and a multi-million-dollar estate into a platform for mental health, education, and community. A woman who chose to sit across courtroom tables from family members who came for her money and still kept showing up to do the work. A grandmother who makes sure that every time Gekume Onfroy hears his father's music, he understands that someone who loved Jase more than anything in this world spent years making sure that music never stopped reaching people. That's the life Cleopatra is living at 46. Heavy, purposeful, and completely defined by a love that outlasted everything the world threw at it. Drop a comment below. Do you think Cleopatra Bernard is done right by XXXTentacion's legacy? Or do you think the estate could be handled differently? We want to know where y'all stand. And if you're not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that button and turn on the notifications because we keep it real out here every single time. We'll see you on the next one.